Did you know a fish as small as a foot in length can have an impact on a whole surrounding ecosystem? Well, that's the case for native Yellowstone cutthroat trout at Yellowstone National Park. The head researcher Todd Cole published a paper titled Yellowstone Lake Ecosystem Restoration and estimated that annually $834 million are contributed to the federal government per year due to fishing at Yellowstone National Park for native Yellowstone cutthroat trout. This means that you, as a U.S. citizen, should care, as these funds go towards things like the Army and military, aka keeping us safe, healthcare, such as Medicaid, and things that are essential to keeping our society running as a whole in the U.S., such as food stamps as well. Native Yellowstone cutthroat trout are one of many fish species that play a part of the surrounding ecosystem at Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone cutthroat trout are being targeted by the invasive lake trout population, which is impacting the surrounding wildlife. Today, I will highlight the effects of this declining native species on three surrounding animals: bears, osprey, and eagles. Native Yellowstone cutthroat trout are one of many fish species that play a part in the surrounding ecosystem at Yellowstone National Park. The native cutthroat trout population is declining due to the invasive lake trout population. It was found in a research done by Lynn Kading titled Lake Trout Discovered in Yellowstone Lake Threaten Native Cutthroat Trout, that lake trout are identified as an invasive species by a lot of surrounding scientists as well as his research in particular. Another researcher named J.R. Ruzick did a case study about the effects of lake trout on native Yellowstone cutthroat trout in Yellowstone Lake and found that lake trout can consume up to 50% of their body length, which means that they can target not only guppy native Yellowstone cutthroat trout, but also young adults that are still getting to the adult spawning stage where they can start contributing to the next generation. Lake trout spawn in deep lakes, and thus they are an inaccessible food source for many of the terrestrial and aerial life surrounding the lake, as they live below depths of which the birds can either dive to or the bears can swat from at the edges of both streams, tributaries, and also the lakes at Yellowstone. Native Yellowstone cutthroat trout Lake trout have had impacts on surrounding life such as bears due to the declining native cutthroat trout populations. In a research done by Paul Stopp, it was found that bears in Yellowstone National Park consume 90% of their diet's worth in purely native Yellowstone cutthroat trout. Over the years, with the decline in the native cutthroat trout population, bears have started migrating elsewhere for food in search for an easier source or also for other sources of the native Yellowstone cutthroat trout, but unfortunately they're not finding them. In research done by J.E. Teisberg, titled Contrasting Past and Current Numbers of Bears Visiting Yellowstone Cutthroat Trout Streams, it was found that the migration is actually causing for more interaction between humans and the bears, which is both dangerous for the bears and humans, as these interactions create human and bear conflict, such as fights or stealing food or just threatening them in general via campsites or public areas that are visited by a lot of the human visitors, and also for the bears, as they can be hurt or damaged or injured because of what they're consuming or even what humans are leaving behind in these areas. Conservation of the cutthroat trout population helps to keep the balance between bears and humans at Yellowstone. The declining cutthroat trout population not only affects bears and other surface animals, but also birds. In a research done by Paul Stopp, it was found that osprey are predatory, aka they dive bomb to catch their fish. They mainly feed on fish primarily, and so they struggle to find other sources of food that they can turn to. In research done by Lisa Barrell on the implications of Yellowstone cutthroat trout population for osprey and bald eagles, it was found that over the years they are seeing less pairs of osprey around the lake. This means that the declining cutthroat trout population is causing for osprey to leave and impacts the biodiversity surrounding the lake. Osprey aren't the only birds affected, eagles are as well. Eagles are opportunistic feeders. That means that they can turn to other things for their sources of food. So they dive bomb the surface to catch fish, but that also means that they can turn to other sources to change it up and add some diversity in their diet. That also means that they can go hunting or looking in other sources that they wouldn't normally look. In research done by Todd Cole, mentioned once again, they are finding that eagles are no longer nesting at the lake, and that they are turning to actually going further inland or towards other bird nests to predate on young of other birds. They are killing these other bird species, and it is becoming a norm for eagles around Yellowstone, which is unusual behavior for them as a species. Lake trout not only decline the cutthroat trout population, but they affect the surrounding wildlife and ecosystem as well. Native Yellowstone cutthroat trout impact Yellowstone National Park ecologically and economically. Cutthroat trout's declining populations have impacts on the surrounding ecosystem and the surrounding wildlife, such as bears, osprey, and eagles, in many different ways. This is my 3x5 index card that was allotted. And this is my outline I had with me for reference as well. Thank you.